Welcome to the broadcast, everybody. I won't lie to you, I'm in a bit of a pinch today, so I'm just popping in for those of you who prefer me to come in with something as opposed to nothing. So you've got your fair warning. I'm just going to whiz through a few topics and it'll be a bit of a hodgepodge. And speaking of hodgepodge, I know some of you will ask about this garment. Isn't it unusual? I thought it was the ugliest thing in Christendom when I saw it. It was from a local charity shop as usual, and it's all kinds of colours. I thought it was a handmade affair when I first saw it, but it's not, and it was brand new, had a label in it. It's got a sort of Picasso thing going on with a Victorian lady. Almost look hand painted, don't they, with birds and all kinds of figures and glitter and tinsel. I've never seen anything like it in my life. It's incredibly hideous, so much so that there's a kind of beauty to it. So I think my fashionista friends in Hackney would be falling in love with it. And, you know, one needs to shake it up a bit sometimes. So I thought that I would take the plunge and sport it, just for a giggle. Archetypes was the order of the day yesterday, and I've made a few notes from that to share with you. Just a few, because it's just far too dull to dwell on, isn't it, my dears? But I wondered what you thought of the news that King Charles has requested an amendment to the Regency Act, adding the Princess Royal and the Earl of Wessex to his list of existing councillors of state, so that Andrew and Harry will not have to deputise for him in their capacity as councillors of state. As you may know, that traditionally this includes the spouse of the reigning monarch and the four next in the line of succession. So at the moment that includes Andrew and Harry. And we're sticking to the subject of Harry today. Andrew's a whole different kettle of fish. So this will go on to be debated by the Houses of Parliament. Legislation may or will be changed in due course. And like many of you, I'm sure, I had a bit of a grumble when this came up, because I thought, well, they're not working royals. Harry made his break. He made this decision, whether he felt coerced or not, to go and be the Prince of Montecito. So why? Well, A, why doesn't he hand back this privilege of being a councillor of state of his own volition, as well as the ducal title? Why doesn't he do that? Good question, eh? But secondly, why won't the king do it? You know, why hasn't he got the kahunas to simply strip this privilege from them instead of adding on Anne and Edward, the two extra to make it 6? Why doesn't he just remove their privileges in some sort of fashion? And it is tempting to think that way. But, you know, I've resolved to see from the King's point of view, who would have witnessed over the last few months even more intensely the Queen's legacy, the way that she dealt these deft chess moves that were free from any influence of her own ego. You know, how satisfying it might be for her to deal with the likes of Harry and Meghan in certain ways that we might find quite delicious. You know, she was more selfless than that. And I think it's actually a show of maturity from the king, who also understands that he's dealing with a stick of dynamite in Harry, isn't he? Just like that flame of red hair that the boy once had before it sort of transmuted into this dandelion affair. You know, it was once that beautiful shock of red hair. Well, it was just like the shock of red on this, the fizzing stick of dynamite that you see about to be chucked into any kind of bugger's muddle. You know, that's what you see with Harry. Charles knows this. He knows it's a delicate situation, and he knows that Harry and Meghan will weaponise any decision that might be seen to besmirch them. And maybe he doesn't want to give them that satisfaction. Or maybe it's just not that deep for Charles. But I think it is just the most mature decision that he could have come to. It might not be the most satisfying for all of us who would love to see them stripped of certain privileges and titles that they will not submit and surrender themselves. But we like to channel the royal spirit, don't we, my dear? Remember? So we have to perhaps be bolstered by the fact that the king, as well as bringing along his own style, which is warmer, more cosy, perhaps a little more fresh than Queen Elizabeth's, he is also influenced by his mother's wisdom and long-term benefits of insight and a sober, calm grounding. So let's stay positive. Did you notice there was an update on the royal family Facebook page on their social media a beautiful photograph of Charles and Camilla. And the Countess of Wessex, our darling Sophie, spent the day in Staffordshire, visiting a number of local charities. Dressed down she was, very casual, but didn't the hair look very pretty? As patron of the NSPCC, she was warmly welcomed for a double engagement to officially open a new £100 million factory and to receive a £300,000 cheque for that children's charity. What a bonanza! She looked so elegant and refined with that sleeky wave to the hair as she toted that nosegay of peachy blooms. Her Royal Highness also visited Newcastle-under-Lyme Council's Safe Space Initiative to see the work being carried out by staff and volunteers on the local refugee programme. And isn't that bottle green skirt a dream? She finished the day off at the Salvation Army, where she had the chance to see the work being carried out by staff on the Rough Sleepers Initiative by supporting those who are homeless or sleeping rough and helping move them into safety and accommodation. But it's not all serious stuff for our Sophie, because it's been announced that she and the Earl of Wessex and Forfar will be representing the royal family by attending the Royal Variety Performance on the 1st of December, I think it is, so I'm sure she'll be all dressed up for the occasion there. Another day, another story from the jungle, and our Mickey Tindall, husband of Zara. Well, I've no doubt that many of you approve of his appearance, and actually a lot of people agree with you. I saw an article in the Times saying that Mickey Tindall's paying a blinder and King Charles will really approve of how relatable he is, how popular this series will make him, and I can see that kind of point of view. So it's not that I'm disagreeing with you. It's just that I don't like it. I can't help that. I don't like it. This week's story that he doled out to us was a story about his mother-in-law, Princess Anne, because he was throwing shapes on the dance floor. I think he said it was at a wedding, and because he's got such a big pair of buttocks and thighs, being a rugby player, which is a wonderful, fantastic physique to have, isn't it? He doesn't do it for me in that respect, but his clothes have always been prone to breakage, tearage and ripping, and he was throwing shapes on a dance floor, and he did, well, let's call it a smut drop, shall we? But the M could be replaced for an L. You know, the kind of drop. I'm a little too tall to get away with doing them without doing serious injury to my ankles. But I'm not saying that I haven't attempted it a few times in life. But our Mickey attempted it on the dance floor while he was dancing with Princess Anne, and he ripped his trousers. And he said that, well, this is the bit I found a bit unbelievable, to be honest, because apparently his pants emerged, his undercrackers, and written on his pants, which I think is rather unappealing, was the words, "nibble my nuts." He said, what was really funny was the fact that on my underwear it said, "nibble my nuts," and apparently his mother-in-law, Princess Anne, said, "absolutely not." Although, of course, took it in good fun. Well, I'm sure that's very entertaining to many of you. I'm sure it's very endearing for many of you. Not to me. But how I feel right now is that I don't begrudge him telling his tales, doing what he has to do when I'm a celebrity. I just wish that a lot of these tales and headlines didn't involve Sarah or the Princess Royal. I think that would make me a lot happier. Didn't the Prince of Wales look absolutely elegant today in that long, dark coat? Haven't seen him in one for a while during the milder months, but so nice with that red tie. He's out and about in Cardiff, in Wales, to meet with members of Parliament and all kinds of people. And one of the things people are saying is that he is going to reiterate today his intention not, so his lack of intention, to have a formal investiture into his role as the Prince of Wales. He's already been created that, but Charles had a formal investiture with a crowning ceremony, didn't he? Well, it looks like William is going to dodge that. It might not play out quite so well in modern life as it did back then. But he wants to strengthen his bonds to the Welsh people, and he's meeting with the Welsh Youth Parliament, where he's going to hear about issues affecting the younger generation there. And remember when he was working as an RAF rescue pilot, helicopter pilot. Remember he lived there in Wales, in Anglesey, so he has a deep affection for the people, the place, and ties to it. Now we turn to the era of the archetypical for the podcast yesterday, which was mainly focused on Meghan's guest, Jamila Jamil, who seemed like a very nice girl, but, as you may have noticed, incredibly effusive about Rachel. And we have to come to terms with the fact that many people in Meghan's life adore her, speak highly of her. She is this fabulous friend that's always there with her cookies and her lunch pails and handwritten notelets, written with a ruler. She is meticulous. She reaches out to people. She is there. Not so much for her family, not so much for the family of her beloved, but for those who are a nice step up the ladder, for those who might come in handy, for those who are an echo chamber for her worldview and for this jejune childish attitude she has. To them, she is the most charming, most devoted, most unfairly besmirched friend on earth. And Jamil, she went overboard in this podcast, making it perfectly clear. She was horrified by the unfathomable amount of hate that Meghan gets. Now, I've always said that this is me speaking personally, just for me. I don't hate the girl. I've always said I've got love for her. I hate what she did and what her husband did. I think they're incredibly misguided, but I try to stay as fair as I can with them. And where I have sympathy with them is for the many conspiracy theories that are dumb as hell, that spring up all over the place and get re-echoed all over the universe as if they're true. And I'm not going to reel them off, but you all know that I don't indulge them and never have. I do have some sympathy for that kind of thing. But I don't have sympathy for the general distaste that they left in people's mouths when they disparaged the Queen's reign and her legacy. And that family was private affairs, private business. No, and I make no apologies for criticising that, my loves, and it doesn't just make me a hater, because I'm not. I'm one of life's lovers. I have love for everybody. But I am also prepared to defend that which I cherish, such as this nation, or what this nation once was, and my royal family, who still remain something that I am very proud of. So that is what it is, my dear. But Meghan says herself at the start of this broadcast, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything. Well, I'm taking your advice, my dear. That's why I'm not afraid to challenge the perceptions that you and hubby has. So you're not the only one that isn't afraid to stand for something, but you very much get the idea and the impression that this was, in Meghan's makeup, she became this person that needs to stand for something. And it's not like she could ever just go for an idle walk in the park with someone without putting the language they use through a lens, reinterpreting the etymological inferences of the way that words and phrases and ideas were formed. And she needs to not just look at every aspect of a quarrel, but to form an opinion so that she can stand for something. She has to stand for something. It seems to be an urgent need in her psyche, my dears, much to our chagrin. And she speaks a lot about the suffragette movement, about feminism, because women in activism, such as Meghan, who are real hotshots, real executives, and she knows what's key. She noticed, as she was growing up and as she was coming through, she noticed so much eye-rolling, so much shade from men when there were activists and women. So many men, apparently. Well, she must have been relentlessly searching for it, mustn't she? Relentlessly. But this word, suffragette, in case you didn't know, and I'll confess, I didn't know. Well, it was created by, this was typical Meghan. She was being really shady, but pretending not to be, while also knowing that we would know that she's being shady, because she said the word was actually created for a notorious UK publication, or should I say tabloid. And she does this rather smug giggle, because she's referring to, of course, can you guess? The Daily Mail, which is the newspaper or publication or tabloid that she's been in and out of the courts with. And, it has to be said, triumphed over so far. But she won't elevate them, she says, by mentioning their name. Now, this is the thing where you think, my word. Go listen to Rachel Johnson, whether you like her or not, as I mentioned before, who has a podcast here, Impossible Women, which is a sort of intelligent version of what... I think it's Difficult Women, actually. That will give you a representation of sophisticated, intelligent women of all stripes from all over the place having decent conversation that isn't just fangirling, that isn't just like cozying up to you. Oh, you're so great, you're wonderful, you bake great cookies, and I'm not going to mention the name. I don't want to elevate anyone. It's so childish. Seriously, even if you're having all kinds of quarrels with the Daily Mail, you don't want to put their name in your mouth because, it's like the other naughty words, the B word. This is the DM word. I just don't want to say the name. Well, it was the Daily Mail, my dear. It was a journalist from the Daily Mail in 1906, apparently, one of the reporters that came up with the name, because the word originally was a suffragist, which denoted a person who was advocating for voting rights. And this reporter twisted it into suffragette because apparently she says et is a diminutive. It shrinks someone down and minimises. But of course, as we know, in time, women reclaimed the word to use it to their advantage and often would refer to it as, or themselves, as not just the suffragettes, but the suffragettes. They're going to get that vote, and props to them. They got it. So she compares this frontier-facing activism of the early 20th century. She compares it, she says it's about being bold and about being brave. Well, yes, much of activism is, my dear, and many of us don't sneer at that. We don't sneer at that. But your brand of activism, my dear, although I'm sure that some of it has some element of nobility. I'm not throwing shade over the whole lot of it, but quite a bit of it, my dear, is not so bold and brave. It's rather stupid and wrong. And when people are stupid as wrong, such as that egg-throwing activist that tried to disparage the king and queen consort last week, when they are immature, ill-informed, high and mighty, yeah, you will get eye rolls and eyebrow raised and some kickback from it. That's to be expected. But Camilla soothes Meghan's ego because she tells her that the reason that she gets such an unfathomable amount of disparagement is because that demonization shows how afraid they are of you. How afraid they are of you. Well, I ain't afraid. I ain't afraid of her. Jamila Jamil, I am not afraid of a strong woman. It might have escaped your notice, but I love strong women. I'm not afraid of a weak woman who purports to be strong. I'm not afraid of a woman who has announced that she is 43% Nigerian. I don't disparage her sometimes, because I have also defended her on many occasions, but I do not disparage her or anybody else, because I am afeard of them and afraid, please don't speak, please don't expose to the world what I don't want anybody to see. No, my dear, no, my dear. If I'm afraid of anything, it is the misinformation, the disinformation, and yes, the lies that I believe that they put out there in the name of being unleashed, righteous, noble, when it's none of those things. And that is the thing that has disgusted many people out there. So what are we supposed to do? Just sit back and go, oh, yeah, everybody's racist, everybody's bigoted, you are the most downtrodden woman in the world, you were never given a chance at anything in life, the royal family were cruel to you. No, my dear. They make it out that everybody is so afraid of them as strong, powerful women that they want to destroy them. Well, they should listen a bit more sharply to my broadcast for one of those things, because you would have heard me over the last few months begging and pleading for the balls of a Margaret Thatcher to emerge back onto our political scene. If you'd watched my broadcast, you might have seen me begging and pleading for the next Prime Minister to be Kemi Badenoch, a strong, opinionated woman of colour. And she's a good deal more than 43% Nigerian, I can assure you of that. I was raised by strong women. I'm comfortable with strong women. So, my darling Jamil, no offence to you, sound like a nice gal, but don't tar us all with that same brush, my dear. It's not that we're afraid of strong, powerful, opinionated women. It's that we're afraid of the ones who have strong, powerful, opinionated lies. And the only part that really made headlines from this show was the fact that she so self-aggrandizingly tells us that a very famous, she can't say the name, but a very famous and influential woman begged her not to give up her activism. Please, Meghan! Even though her life has changed. So she throws that into the mix, simply to glorify herself. You have to listen to this podcast to believe it, but could you ever imagine the likes of Catherine, for example, or any other royal, so self-satisfyingly licking their own orifice with self-pleasure to promote their benevolence to the world? That's what I find quite nauseating and quite sickening. Every episode of this podcast is a vehicle for her own magnificence and for her own humble bragging. If she is queen of anything, it is the art of the humble brag. I'm not going to dwell on the subject, but I'm sure you saw that Harry was out and about in Hawaii paying a visit to the USS Arizona Memorial at Pearl Harbor. That was over the weekend as he marked Remembrance Sunday. And Archewell shared a photograph showing them in front of military personnel to mark Veterans Day and Remembrance Day. Well, I've no problem with the boy showing his respect, but the mind does boggle at the respect that his hosts seem to show him, treating him as if he's still a working royal, treating him as if he's still an ambassador of the world. This is what gets me. But I can't blame Harry for that. Fools will be fools. I actually thought it was very sweet of Harry to send a letter, as he did, to the bereaved children of members of the British Armed Forces, saying that they shared a bond due to having lost a parent. He wrote a note to Scotty's Little Soldiers, which is a charity for bereaved British Forces children and young people. He reminded them, you are not alone. But as much as this fruit can be a sour old lemon, my dear, a bitter lemon, as much as I can, I am not so bitter as to not recognise the sweet, and Harry can be very sweet and can do very good things. So I wish him very well in those endeavours, and there's no question that he makes a lot of people's day with the occasional ray of sunshine and sunlight. Just don't beam those rays on the back of unfair, unwarranted tirades that are full of mischief. If you didn't do that, they'd just let you get on with these things that you need to do, my dear. Thank you for joining me, my fruits. I hope I managed to rustle up some kind of content. I did warn you that I'm in a bit of a pinch, so it is what it is. But that is my offering for the day. Have a wonderful week ahead. Stay fruity and on royal duty at all times, and I'll catch up with you soon.